자, 자, 한문 공유하고, 자, 제일 처음부터 들어올게요. 오늘까지 하고 좀 맞췄으면 좋겠는데, 빨리빨리 해서 맞춰봅시다. 엄청 길었어. 보통 이렇게 안 길는데, 이 날짜는 엄청 길어요. 보니까. 자,
Monday, September 21st, 1942.
잠깐만요. September, Wednesday. 여기죠. 아, 그 전 거였구나.
Wednesday, September 2nd, 1942. Dearest Kitty, Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan have had a terrible fight. I've never seen anything like it, since Mother and Father wouldn't dream of shouting at each other like that. The argument was based on something so trivial it didn't seem worth wasting a single word on it. Oh well, to each his own. Of course, it's very difficult for Peter, who gets caught in the middle, but no one takes Peter seriously anymore since he's hypersensitive and lazy. Yesterday he was beside himself with worry because his tongue was blue instead of pink. This rare phenomenon disappeared as quickly as it came. Today he's walking around with a thick scarf on because he's got a stiff neck. His Highness has been complaining of lumbago too. Aches and pains in his heart, kidneys, and lungs are also par for the course. He's an absolute hypochondriac. That's the right word, isn't it? Mother and Mrs. Van Daan aren't getting along very well. There are enough reasons for the friction. To give you one small example, Mrs. Van D has removed all but 3 of her sheets from our communal linen closet. She's assuming that Mother's can be used for both families. She'll be in for a nasty surprise when she discovers that Mother has followed her lead. Furthermore, Mrs. Van D is ticked off because we're using her china instead of ours. She's still trying to find out what we've done with our plates. They're a lot closer than she thinks since they're packed in cardboard boxes in the attic behind a load of Opetka advertising material. As long as we're in hiding, the plates will remain out of her reach. Since I'm always having accidents, it's just as well. Yesterday, I broke one of Mrs. Van D's soup bowls. Oh, she angrily exclaimed. Can't you be more careful? That was my last one. Please bear in mind, Kitty, that the 2 ladies speak abominable Dutch. I don't dare comment on the gentlemen. They'd be highly insulted. If you were to hear their bungled attempts, you'd laugh your head off. We've given up pointing out their errors since correcting them doesn't help anyway. Whenever I quote Mother or Mrs. Van Daan, I'll write proper Dutch instead of trying to duplicate their speech. Last week, there was a brief interruption in our monotonous routine. This was provided by Peter and a book about women. I should explain that Margot and Peter are allowed to read nearly all the books Mr. Kleiman lends us, but the adults prefer to keep this special book to themselves. This immediately piqued Peter's curiosity. What forbidden fruit did it contain? He snuck off with it when his mother was downstairs talking and took himself and his booty to the loft. For 2 days, all was well. Mrs. Van Daan knew what he was up to but kept mum until Mr. Van Daan found out about it. He threw a fit, took the book away, and assumed that would be the end of the business. However, he'd neglected to take his son's curiosity into account. Peter, not in the least fazed by his father's swift action, began thinking up ways to read the rest of this vastly interesting book. In the meantime, Mrs. Van D asked Mother for her opinion. Mother didn't think this particular book was suitable for Margot, but she saw no harm in letting her read most other books. You see, Mrs. Van Daan, Mother said, there's a big difference between Margot and Peter. To begin with, Margot's a girl, and girls are always more mature than boys. Second, she's already read many serious books and doesn't go looking for those which are no longer forbidden. Third, Margot's much more sensible and intellectually advanced as a result of her 4 years at an excellent school. Mrs. Van Daan agreed with her, but felt it was wrong as a matter of principle to let youngsters read books written for adults. Meanwhile, Peter had thought of a suitable time when no one would be interested in either him or the book. At 7:30 in the evening, when the entire family was listening to the radio in the private office, he took his treasure and stole off to the loft again. He should have been back by 8:30, but he was so engrossed in the book that he forgot the time and was just coming down the stairs when his father entered the room. The scene that followed was not surprising. After a slap, a whack, and a tug of war, the book lay on the table and Peter was in the loft. This is how matters stood when it was time for the family to eat. Peter stayed upstairs. No one gave him a moment's thought. He'd have to go to bed without his dinner. We continued eating, chatting merrily away, when suddenly we heard a piercing whistle. We laid down our forks and stared at each other, the shock clearly visible on our pale faces. Then we heard Peter's voice through the chimney. I won't come down! Mr. Van Daan leapt up, his napkin falling to the floor, and shouted with the blood rushing to his face, I've had enough! Father, afraid of what might happen, grabbed him by the arm, and the two men went to the attic. After much struggling and kicking, Peter wound up in his room with the door shut, and we went on eating. Mrs. Van Daan wanted to save a piece of bread for her darling son, but Mr. Van D was adamant. If he doesn't apologize this minute, he'll have to sleep in the loft. We protested that going without dinner was enough punishment. What if Peter were to catch cold? We wouldn't be able to call a doctor. Peter didn't apologize and returned to the loft. Mr. Van Daan decided to leave well enough alone, though he did note the next morning that Peter's bed had been slept in. At 7, Peter went to the attic again, but was persuaded to come downstairs when Father spoke a few friendly words to him. After 3 days of sullen looks and stubborn silence, everything was back to normal. Yours, Anne.
들어보니까 하루에 끝내.
Monday, September
잠깐만요.
21st, 1942. Dearest Kitty,
오늘
today I'll
끝냈으면 좋겠다 그랬는데 보니까 생각보다 좀 양이 많은데 항상 영혼독해를 하자 그랬죠. 우리 에마부터 해볼게요. 우리 어제 읽은 다음 부부터 머리에 이렇게 듣고 나서 머리에 들어온 내용이 있었을까요? 어떤 내용인 거, 어떤 내용이 따라온다? 이게 한 가지 정도만 얘기해 볼까요? 둘이 어제 어머니가 그 프랭크 어머니랑 저기 뭐죠? 피터 어머니랑 이 애들 책 이렇게 읽게 하는 게 좋은지 안 좋은지 서로 토론하는 장면까지 나왔잖아요. 그 다음 이후에 어떤 내용이 나오나요?
미세스 프랭크의 말에 동의를 했고, 그래도 실험은 좋지 않은 것 같아서 계속 숨겼는데, 실험을 계속해서 찾았어요.
그래요. 뒤에 장면 보니까 또 뭔가 일이 막 일어났죠. 그죠? 그게 이제 뭘까? 그러면 스티브 어떤 장면이 나온 것 같아요? 머리에 딱 이렇게 들으면서 머리에 떠오른 장면 한번 얘기해 볼까요? Steve? Are you there?
네. 네.
What could you understand?
일단은요, 아빠가 친근하게 그에게 얘기를 했다는 사실을 알았어요.
자기 아빠가?
네.
오케이. 자, 그 다음에 우리, 누구지? 빌. 이게 가끔가다 들어와서 뭐 어떤 내용인지 머리에 들어왔을까요? 어떤 내용이 이렇게 머릿속에 들어왔나요? 들으면서?
그 앞뒤를 몰라가지고 잘 모르겠어요.
앞뒤를 몰라도 지금 하루치 일기를 다 들려줬거든요.
네.
그러니까 그냥 머리에 들어온 거 하나 이렇게 이렇게 이런 내용인 것 같다. 이렇게 머리에 들어온 걸 하나 얘기해 보세요. What could you understand? 특별히 없으면 없다고 하셔도 괜찮아요.
예.
머리 안 들어왔어요, 아무것도? 자, 그러면 가보겠습니다. 이거. 자, 여기 you see Miss Van Daan 여기부터 누구지? 에마 읽어볼게요. You see Mrs. Van Daan, mother said.
You see, Mrs. Van Daan, mother said, there's a big difference between Maroon and Peter.
뭐래요? you see Miss Van Daan, 당신도 알다시피 이렇게 말할 때 쓴 말이죠. 자, there's a big difference between Margot and Peter. 뭐래요? 마고랑 피터 사이에는 a big difference, 큰 차이점이 있어요. 자, 자기 딸이 피터랑 다르다는 걸 얘기하죠. 그 다음에 계속 읽어보세요. To begin with.
With Margaret is girl and girls are always more mature than boys.
요런 말 선생님 동의 안 한 말인데 always란 말 이런 적당하지 않은데 Margot is a girl and girls are always more mature than boys 이렇게 이건 좀 남성 비하적인 발언이죠. 여자애들이 항상 남자들보다는 더 성숙하죠. 이렇게 얘기를 했죠. 그 다음에 자 스티브 해보세요. 스티브 세컨부터. Second.
Second, she has already read many serious books and doesn't go looking for those which are no longer forbidden.
자, 뭐래요? She's already read many serious books. 자, 심각한 책들을 많이 읽어봐서 doesn't go looking for, look for 하면 뭐뭐를 찾다라는 수거죠. 그래서 그렇게 안 한대요. which are no longer forbidden. 자, 이렇게 금지된 책들을 더 이상 이렇게 막 그렇게 호기심 갖고 찾지 않아요. 이렇게 얘기했죠. 마고가 막 읽지 말라는 책 굳이 읽으려고 안 한다. 그런 책들 많이 읽어봤으니까. 그 다음에 third부터 우리 빌 읽어볼게요. Third,
Margaret
마고
is much more sensible and intellectually advanced as a result of her 4 years at an excellent school.
네. 자, 그리고 세 번째는 마고가 센서블 하다는 얘기는 우리가 누구는 센스쟁이 막 이런 말 많이 하죠. 센스가 좋다 이러니까 재치가 있다. 재치가 있고 intellectually advanced 지적으로 훨씬 발달돼 있어서 계속 자기 딸 자랑해요. 그 결과 뭐 결과? As a result of her 4 years on excellent school. 4년 동안 아주 훌륭한 학교를 다녀서 얘가 다니는 학교가 무슨 영재학교 비슷한 데였나 봐요. 이렇게 계속 딸 자랑하죠. 그 다음에 여기 다시 Emma 읽겠습니다. Mrs. Van Den agreed with her.
Mrs. Van Den agreed with her, but felt it was wrong as a matter of principle to let young histories read books written for adults.
자, 여기 뭐냐면, 기본적으로 뭐래요? 미스 밴덴 agreed with her. 자, 밴덴 여사도 자기 엄마랑 동의를 했어. 뭐 이제 마고가 똑똑하고 마고가 더 뭐 이런 말에 동의했는데, but felt it. 하지만 느꼈대. It was wrong. 나쁜 것이라고. 잘못된 것이라고. As a matter of principle. 자, principle 뭘까요? principle 원리란 뜻이죠. 원리. 자, as a matter of 원칙상이란 뜻이죠. as a matter of principle 그러면 원칙상 it was wrong 잘못됐다. 어른들 위해서 쓴 책을 애들이 읽으면 안 되지라고 하는 거야. youngster 그러면 뭐냐면 어린이들이라는 뜻인데 young person usually an older child. 그러니까 우리 뭐 청소년이라고 보시면 좋을 것 같아요. youngster 그러면 한 4 youngest between the age of 10 to 10 and 16 뭐 한 요 정도 여러분 나이 때 영스터들이 그런 거 책 읽으면 안 되지 이렇게 얘기했어요. 어떻게 books written for adult 성인용 책 이란 얘기죠. 읽으면 안 되지 이렇게 얘기를 했습니다. 그러면 여기까지 해서 이게 오늘 끝내보자 그랬는데 어이구 아직도 많이 남았어요. 자, 3분 남았는데 라이딩을 계속 해보는 게 좋은 것 같아요. 그래서 이제 지금 자세히 읽는 거 정독하는 시간을 갖겠습니다. 지금 다시 오늘 배운 거 얘기하면 둘이 어머니들이 얘기하는데 마고에 대해서 프랭크 여사가 얘기한 거, 그 다음에 우리 미스 밴덴은 어떻게 생각했는지 그거를 한두 줄, 세 줄 정도로 간단하게 서머라이즈해서 선생님한테 보내시면 피드백 드리겠습니다. 자, 좋은 훈련이 될 거예요. 똑같이 안 쓰셔도 되고 쉬운 말로 바꿔서 쓰셔도 돼요. 자기 머리에 이해한 대로. 자, 시작해 보겠습니다. 자, 녹화는 여기서 끌게요. 자, 개인톡 보내시면 개별 첨삭해 드리는 거 아시죠? 자, 오케이. 자, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.
감사합니다.
자, 네네. 자, 보내주세요. 그리고 줌은 닫겠습니다.